I think of everything that I put together for this, this is my favorite section. So I was like, I think we can make 3 hours go nice and seamless. It's going to be a lot of back and forth, just like we did yesterday with the group options. So I think it'll be pretty fun, and we'll jump kind of right into it. Our objective is to introduce or refresh the effective coaching tools that are going to help make an impact on the environment that we have to make it the best we can. The best environment for the most kids as long as possible. Right? If we can think of those 3 things as part of our philosophy, we're going to be in good shape. It's going to be, again, about 2.5, 3 hours, and we're going to have 5 topic slides. So with only 5 topics to talk about, hopefully this will be a lot of discussion amongst your groups and within the big group after a group does a presentation. So I know we've already gone down this side, and you guys presented late yesterday, so this will be group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll be presenting this morning on this first topic. The first one we're going to talk about are athlete goal cards. This actually came from a coach who was working on his certifications, and he said, we use something where we can figure out what the athletes need, and then we can get that to the coaches so that the coaches know what to give the athletes. And it was kind of like what Gene was saying yesterday. I had to remember where it came in. When Gene was talking about, how do I coach you before the match? What do you want after the match? A very similar tool that's going to be able to get us there. Then we'll have Edgar Dale's Cone of Experience. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. We're going to talk about a VARC questionnaire on learning styles. And I'm going to try to throw something at you before that happens about windshield washers on your car and how you would change them. So I just want you to think, if you've ever had to change a windshield wiper on your car, how you would replace that windshield wiper if the rubber was all ripped up and you bought a new one. So I just want to see it, and then we're going to do the VARC testing. So if you've got your computer or your phone, we'll go to the link for the VARC testing, and then I'm going to compare my theory with the VARC theory and see where we come up and see how close we are. And if it works, then I'll keep telling people my way, and if it doesn't work, then I'll shut up. Then we'll do our athlete profile card, a different communication guide, and we'll be ready to rock. Sound good? Okay. Athlete goal card. Let's see where we're at. In my mind, I think about Fargo for a situation like this. You'd said that you've got 58 athletes that you're going to be taking to Fargo this year. Biggest number your state's ever had, right? Huge numbers, a lot of coaches, and a lot of coaches that may not have had a lot of experience with the athletes that they're going to have to corner when they get into that environment. So you go to Fargo, there's thousands of kids, hundreds of coaches. You might be in a corner with somebody and you have no idea. And you're trying to coach them and communicate to them with the style that you know without a lot of knowledge of that person that you're giving that information to. How do they receive that information? How does it process? Is this something that's going to be too complex because they haven't had the background? Right? It'd be like, I know high crotches, I'm great at high crotches, I tell them to hit a high crotch, and that person has no idea how to hit a high crotch. They don't have the tools.
We have these forms on our PA website for regionals and states because you are required to be bronze or copper, depending on which level. And I think they worked out great.
Awesome.
I saw a number of coaches from the official standpoint getting in one looking at the cards.
Wow.
I was really, really surprised at how well it is received, and I think it's absolutely great.
That's awesome. We're debating seeing if we can get these printed, because I'll send it to you in a PDF, and then you've got your line and your fold, so you can fold this over and fold it together, and it's not quite wallet size, but we could do something where we make it wallet size. And in a perfect world, I'd love to see it where business card, or how you have like a luggage tag for the airport and it's got all your stuff on it. If we did a card like that, the athletes could keep it on their travel bag. And so if their travel bag gets thrown in the corner, coaches would know right away exactly what's going on. I'd like you to come up with more ideas once you see it and we talk about it, how to implement it, how things would work, and throw those ideas back during our discussion so that maybe that gives us we could actually do that way a lot easier, and it's a better step than we have now. I used to be kind of perfectionist, like, I don't want to release this until it's perfect, and I realized there's no perfect, right? But progress is a good thing. The evolution is a good thing. So any step better than what we've got now, throw it out, and we'll see where we go. What's interesting is we tried to start off with a sample. We could have just said, hey, here's a card, fill it out and go. But then we don't provide that first part of EDIP, the educational part, right? We would have just said, practice. We would have missed the educational piece. We would have missed the demonstration of it and we would have probably missed the imitation, well, maybe not the imitation, but we at least missed half of our educational process by just including the card itself. So I like having this information. But it would be information like, my best move from neutral is what? Right? So if I'm coaching Omar in Fargo, Omar, what's your best takedown?
Flying squirrel.
Yeah, perfect. I love it. A flying squirrel. That's exactly what I wanted to see. So now I see the best move from neutral, Omar's flying squirrel. Now I need to say, hey, Omar, when I see the opportunity for the flying squirrel to happen, what's the cue that you like me to say? What can I say to you that would trigger? You might be like, you might just say, hey, if I look over in the corner, give me a loop-de-loop or something like that, you know, or just something like that. Yeah. So now I have a better understanding. Same from parterre, right? What's my best turn on top? What's a gut? So maybe if I see you driving across the double, as you're driving across the double, you might want me to say, look gut, look gut, look gut. And if that doesn't throw the opponent the tip, maybe that's what, as soon as you hit, because there's always that oh poop moment, right? When I give up a takedown, I give up that takedown, I'm going down, and as soon as I give up that takedown, I hit the ground, I'm like, crap, I gave up the takedown. That's when you hit the gut, right? So we want to be able to communicate in the way that that person can receive it, understand it in a very short moment to make it work. You can practice these in Fargo as well. You're watching that athlete in practice, and you can just say, hey, where's your goal card? Oh, it's over on my bag over here. Great. So you can do things like that where you put it into practice form in your national team camps. Same from top. And then we're going to get into this zone of optimal performance. Basically, that says what energy level is best for your performances. Of course, growing up in Iowa, I was always the guy that thought, I got to smack myself in the face. I got to run out there. I got to just crush people. And I realized, unfortunately, not until later in my career, I didn't perform at the optimal level at a high intensity level. I used to think that I needed to be somewhere around here, 8, 9, but I realized I really perform better around a 3, 4. When I'm just relaxed and I'm not worried about anything, and I just walk out on the mat and wrestle and have fun. And for me, it was in my mindset where I would say, I don't know how I'm going to beat you, but I'm going to figure it out. And I've got 6 minutes to do it. It almost made it like a challenge, a game, and my mind really did well in that challenging game environment. Some people need that, right? Some people need to be wrestled a little bit and pummeled. I had an athlete at West Point, and I'd coached his older brother. I'd coached his brother before that and him, and we ended up coaching another one younger. And man, the first minute or 2 minutes of match, he wasn't quite kicking for him. And then it would kick in, and he'd have a great match, but maybe he'd lose by a point, or maybe he would just miss the major. And so we started looking at it, and I said, what if we pummeled for 30 seconds right before you step on the mat? Not 5 minutes before. What if we got you match ready? Because the kid was in great shape. He was a great nutrition. Everything was good. He could handle an extra 30 seconds. So what we did is we got that first minute or 2 minutes of anxiety and pressure and stress out of him before he stepped on the mat with hard hand fighting and pummeling. So, I'm in a suit or something, and he's bleeding on me and sweating, and we're just pummeling and kind of slapping each other around before the match. And then, smack on the button, he runs out there and he's good to go. Which, by the way, is that okay anymore? Touching a private area on an athlete, especially if it's an athlete that you may not know, right? I'm not saying right or wrong yet, but I am saying it's something that we need to think about, our normal tendencies. And are our normal tendencies something that someone else might misperceive as something other than a positive thing? Maybe it's a pat on the back now. Shift, right? Slight shift. We can make adjustments as coaches to match safe sport so we can protect our kids.
I had a woman come up to me and say that to me. It was my own kid. She didn't know it was my own kid. For the 5 years he's been wrestling, that's just, he went out and smacked him on the butt and off you go. And she came up to me and she said, I don't think you can do that. I said, I was like clueless. I coached 30 kids.
Sure.
And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, you smacked that kid before he won. That's my own son. And then she apologized, but I was like, man, people are watching.
Oh, yeah. Because you hit him, or man, because where you hit him?
Where I am. She said on the bus. Smacked him on the bus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My high school coach, he would crack the back, smack the butt. You're on your way through the lineup of clapping.
Sure.
And that was the tradition that ever since I was
And these are
watched the program.
these are things we have to be careful about, right? When we say, why do you do this that way? What's the one answer that just never sits well?
That's always been done. Yep.
That's not a good answer. If you can't come up with a reason, right? I always say, wrestling, right? Sometimes we tend to embrace the crazy that we can be and the intensity level that we have. Like you said, it's a lifestyle. It's not just a sport. For us at the intense level, it's a lifestyle. But what about the kids who are just coming into the sport? It's not a lifestyle for them yet, right? And we want to get them to that point. So that's where the patience and all these things come in. So we get into that scenario. These things happen, and we've just got to be a little bit more aware, and we can't say it's because it's how we've always done it. What's the advantage? Well, neurologically, there are, I don't even know I have to get to Eric. The neurons are firing, and the sensitivity of the buttocks sends the signal to the brain, which responds quicker for your heart rate to elevate to get you at competition heart rate level. If there was a reason for it, and you can say this is the reason and it's a proven reason and it's a fact, then you could say I can justify what I'm doing. But most of us can't do that, right? When we all used to have the slap back games and stuff, birthday, everybody would have to go through your legs and you'd crack them on the butt as they would go through. I remember the things that we did that were hazing and in some degrees, probably even minor torture, all in the name of team bonding, right? Or whatever it was called. That day's over, right? It's gone and it's out of the way. And if we don't want to accept it and embrace and move forward, then those people are going to be extinct, right? And I don't want our coaches to go into that extinction route. I want them to keep in the evolution route. We have to be able to change. Kevin Jackson, when he comes in, talk to him about this. We've had a lot of, and I love Kevin Jackson. He's concerned because how do I teach to an athlete when I'm putting my hands on them, right? The reason that we talk about EDIP now is because I was looking for an acronym for a program because he's like, I'm just questioning how this looks. What does it look like? And how do we teach this to our grassroots coaches? And I said, you know everything that you're going to do to an athlete, right? And he said, I absolutely do. And I said, could you just educate them at the beginning now and explain the process that you're going to do so that everybody understands the expectations? High crotch, I still have to put my hand in the crotch. I still have to come back through high in the crotch from the buttock side. So there's still sensitive areas that we're touching, right? If we explain it, we talk about it, we do it in public, and people aren't offended on the other side, that's good teaching, right? And we can all do that. We can all make that little adjustment to be better how we teach so that we can make these things happen. I'm really excited. I wouldn't be honest with you if I said I wasn't concerned when Safe Sport really first started to kind of churn its way through, because there are a lot of things that maybe I didn't understand, or even the Safe Sport folks were still trying to develop. But as I look at it now, I see it as a great opportunity for our sport, not something that's going to hinder us. It's something that's going to jump us to a more professional level much quicker than we would have on our own. This is an evolutionary jump for our sport if we embrace it and learn from it. So I'm excited. I think now it's helped me change my perspective on this.
So, I mean, one of the things that I got commented on about the slapping of the butt and everything from my athletic director, she was like, can't do that anymore. So for my kids, it was a lot about just, this was my process, this is what I did, I was always used to it. And I said, well, let's change it. So we ended up doing some handshakes. For some of the kids that didn't want to change, they're like, I need something that tells me now it's time to wrestle.
Sure.
So for them, it was, we talk, slap a head here a little bit, and then we do a handshake or something, a little fist bump or something like that, and that's what their trigger is.
Okay.
For when they want to say, I still need something that tells me it's time to wrestle, and something from you to me, and we just have the same pattern every single match. That way I know it's just the same match.
Sure. You're building the routine and that habit pattern, right? I do this, the trigger goes off in my brain, I don't have to think, right? It's that caveman brain, right? I don't want to use calories, so I try to make everything a habit, and then the habits form, and then they're really tough to break. Because the brain says we don't want to spend extra calories thinking about it. We know we do this every day, so let's just make it a habit, right? Those are tough to break. And that's our job as coaches, to take the negative habits that come in and replace them with positives. Not just with our athletes, with ourselves. Yeah, Kate?
One thing that we do as female wrestlers, because I know a lot of times we have male coaches, so one thing that we have developed, when you're in the practice room or when you're wrestling live, whether your partner takes you down or you take them down, you always have that reset handshake. Where you slap hands in the beginning. That's one thing that women do, like before they go on the mat, you slap the hand. Like it's the reset handshake before you go on the mat. So if you frame that in the practice room, that helps on the mat. So whether they're taken down, you're like, hey, that can be reframed as the same thing as slapping on the butt, because we've had to draw that line.
That's smart. And is there a difference? Is there a difference physically or physiologically or mentally for a kid to get hit on the butt versus get a slap on the hand?
So I have girls that we travel with, and each of us, like, to get to know them, will come up with a quick handshake before they get out on the mat. And one of them's like, Coach, I need up, down, tap, slap on the butt. And I'm like, all right, like, I don't really know. And then her parents are like, no, she needs slap on the butt on the way out. So of course, like the first tournament, you're like, all right, there you go. And then I'm like, man, this is like on flow.
Publicly broadcast.
Yeah, so the next turn, I'm like, hey, listen, like, maybe like on the back. And she's like, so on the back. And then she like lost, comes out. She's like, no, Coach, I need like, I'm like, well, we need to figure this out. So like, we're traveling a lot. And this is, even though your parents are okay with it and you're okay with it, like at the end of the day, it's going to be on me.
And I think that's smart because when I was that kid walking in the grocery store checkout line, looking at the candy, telling them what I wanted, Mom said, you don't need that, right? And she was right. You don't need M&Ms. You don't need the Snickers. They don't need the slap on the butt. She really doesn't need it. In her mind, she does, but she's made that up internally, right? And there's something that we can do. I think the hand slap might be good. Maybe it's 2 hand slaps. Maybe you'll create your own thing. And in this transition, as we're starting to think about how we're going to move into that different direction, these are the tough conversations, right? Just like we were talking yesterday, there are tough conversations we have to have with people. This might be a tough conversation. I know you're telling me that you need this in this moment to be successful, but when you think about it, if your single leg is dominant, what does slapping you on the butt do? If your counter offense from parterre, nobody can turn you, you're going to be successful. If you've got a good transition takedown to turn, you're going to be successful. I understand in your mind right now, you feel like this is what's going to get you there. Could they do it to themselves? Could she just say, before the match, and then she can go out. If it's just about the physical act, now coach gets out of the loop, right? Pull yourself out of these loops that we know, because at some point, it won't even be an option. Somebody will push the Safe Sport report button on our website. They'll say they saw you do that. And now it's not a USA Wrestling issue now. It's a Safe Sport issue. They're going to do the investigation. They're going to look at the video. They're going to see it matches up. And that's when suspensions and bans happen, right? And again, I don't mean this as a scare tactic, because that's not it. It's how we can be better as coaches and appear better in that world, right? Your administrators see you give a crack on that butt. All of a sudden, maybe they don't support you like they did before. You're smacking them in the face, right? We can have a much better perception of our sport in the world by making the changes that Safe Sport's recommending to us. And again, I was a little hesitant and scared of these changes, and now I'm embracing it. I'm like, first of all, it's not going away. So if you don't embrace it, you're already going to be a dinosaur, right? And I hate to say it bluntly, but we've got to know. If you're not changing your style now, you're becoming extinct. And if you're changing your style now, you'll have a chance to stick around. And there's no middle ground, right? But we're in this kind of weird transition moment where people are starting to get to understand it. Yes.
This whole conversation kind of plays into what we were talking about yesterday with the mental aspect of it, because the follow-up to that with my son is that he hates, like if I go to give him slap and 5 before a match, like he doesn't want to have to think, I got to look at my dad, slap him 5. Like he's in his zone. I don't even think he realizes when I do and don't smack him. But part of the mental game is, and you just touched on it too, like when I was in high school, my dad used to come down and shake out my arms. And if he didn't do that, I felt tight before I went up. And I remember, I think it was junior year, when he didn't do it before a match at States, and I lost, and it was all in my head. It's the mental aspect. I didn't need that, but I thought I did. So I try to tell these young kids, like, these little routines that they want to do, like, don't get caught up in them, because when you're at a tournament and we have 120 kids there, not every coach is going to know your little routine, and if you're stuck in a corner warming up and you don't have the room you normally have, you better figure it out, so, stuff like that. And the butt smack one just kind of jumped out at me because you brought it up. But it is interesting when you see it all the time with kids. And then there's some kids just, they do their own thing. Yeah. And that's just off they go, and they know when they're up, and they come up and they're ready to go. And I think the key there is, to today's point with the cards and the communication with the athletes is, especially when you're coaching a club team and there are kids there you don't know, like, the expectation can't be there that I'm going to do it the way that, Dad did or your regular coach does every time. and then for them to be successful, they've got to break out of that and just figure it out on their own and come up with their own warm-up that works for them.
And what's nice about that, can the athlete, you said you're in Fargo, a lot of kids, a lot of stuff going on, can your kids guarantee that process happens before a match? Can they control it? If it's their internal process, yes. If it's their external process, no, right? Maybe dad gets in an accident on the way to the tournament. Now dad's out, right? And I had that, I remember losing to a kid at a tournament. I was younger. My mom had been in an accident. She never missed a match. She was always at the matches. And I had driven up early for weigh-ins. She was coming later. She hit some ice, spun out, and got in an accident. And she was fine. Everything was good. She showed up, but she showed up about 2 hours late. And I was just sitting there looking in the bleachers the whole time before I stepped on the mat, thinking like, where the heck's my mom? This isn't right. Something's wrong. I couldn't get back into that mindset. Of course, back in the day, we didn't have coaches anyway. It was just you and your buddy. Your buddy sat in your corner, you sat in his or hers, and that was just kind of the way we did it. But yeah, do we talk to our athletes about what control looks like? And what can you control? Can you control whether I'm there today? You can't. Even though I'm there almost all the time, it's the few times that I'm not that'll really start to mess with you. So that's why I'm not going to slap you on the butt, because if you're relying on me, I'm not going to be the reliable constant. You're going to be the reliable constant, right? That's going to be the life for you. Chris?
I dare to say the word in general, but it's almost like it's a superstitious type of thing. Like they get so psychologically wrapped up in, like he said, my specific warm-up. Well, what if you don't have the ability to do that warm-up? I mean, you should not let that affect your performance.
You should.
But it doesn't matter what sport it is. I mean, look at Michael Jordan. He wore his North Carolina shorts for every single game he played in pros, underneath his Bulls. And I mean, you look at those guys. Oh, I won't wash my underwear. I won't wash my jock or whatever it is. And it's just the things that people do. Oh, these are my lucky socks. You know what I mean? It's all psychological, as we've kind of pointed out, but.
I still tie my shoes when they're off the ground. My shoes can't be on the ground when I tie them. I'm 47, I have no competitive anything in me anymore. And I have to, if I tie my shoes, I have to stand and tie them. Because as a kid, I always thought, you know what? What's one small thing I can do that improves me every day? And I was like, well, if I tie my shoes on one foot, then I'm learning balance. Well, how many times do you tie your shoes? Once or twice a day? I'll stand here forever, right? Maybe but I'm here tying my shoes. Have your kids at practice. Hey, everybody, warm up today. I want everybody to stand on one foot and take your shoe off. Take your shoe off, hop over, pick it up, put your shoe back on, tie it back together. What kind of a balance and agility? And it's fun, right? We're making a balance and agility fun. And this is where us going into practice prepared makes such a difference. A drill like that, you might get 100% kids coming back tomorrow. They're, man, this guy's crazy. She made me take my shoe off. And then it was. Those are the kind of things that kids remember, and those fun moments that keep them coming back, that we can embrace. Zone of optimal performance. You kind of see where I was always in that wrong zone. And it makes sense to me now why, as my competition got higher and higher, I started to notice that's where I would falter, because I wasn't really in the right zone. And once I found it and it clicked, I'm like, oh, this is it. Unfortunately, it was about 2 matches left in my career. So timing wasn't great. But you know, it's never too late to figure those things out, because maybe for my journey, it wasn't about my success. It was about sharing that information. So I can look at it and be like, man, that's too bad I didn't have it earlier. But boy, because I found it late, I think it makes more of an impact on me to get to share things. So maybe that's why it goes. So too high. When your anxiety is too high and you've got to calm down, how do you get your athletes to calm down? Who uses any skills or tactics? I'll let you do this in your groups, and then we'll talk about it as a group later, because I think that's kind of neat. But this would be where you can kind of start your conversation. Do you know your athletes' best performance areas? Do you know their best skills and how to communicate to that during the match, right? I wouldn't ever want to see, if the opponent's really heavy on this lead, I wouldn't want to just be like, left sweep, his leg's sticking out. And then the guy goes, yep, okay, thanks, coach. I coached the wrong kid. I gave him all my secrets because I didn't communicate it in a smart way, right? And then if your intensity is too low, what can we do to increase the intensity if it's too low, right? And then affirmation statements. On the mental training side, and I know a lot of folks in here haven't done a lot of it, but positive mental affirmations. I am confident. I am aggressive. I attack my opponents. I destroy my opponents. right? I get out on bottom right away. No one can turn me in a gut wrench. I can take anyone down with my single leg. The more we frame these positive thoughts into our mind, the easier it is to be more positive. I always call it like if everybody said this out loud right now, I want you to say, I am confident. I am confident. Wow, how confident do we sound? Right? I am confident. I am confident. That's better, right? I am confident. I am confident. I am confident. I am aggressive. I attack my opponents. I am a champion. What are you thinking right now?
I'm a bad man.
Yeah, right? And as we start this off, right, it's going to be, oh, well, I was really confident until 30 seconds in when they blast doubled me and then I lost my confidence. Okay, I got it now. Now maybe that's a position, a defensive line. We can work on that. But it's the process of introducing them to that, because what will happen is in competition, the positive mental affirmations help make you more confident, more successful. But are we here just for winning? Raised in the hand? What are we here for? We're here for the life skills of these athletes, and wrestling's our tool. So we give them positive mental affirmations. What happens? You know, I saw a lady running to make the bus when I was coming down here the other day. And I was sitting there, I'm like, wow, this lady's in a real hurry. I hope everything's okay. And then I started to realize, because I don't ride the bus, oh, I'm on a bus. She's probably trying to catch this bus. And she was running as fast as she could. Do you think she was telling herself, I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to make it? I guarantee not. She was like, I've got to catch this bus. I'm going to catch this bus. I've got to run faster. I'm going to catch this bus. And she caught it. Right? In that moment, you could see she was giving it everything she had. So there had to be internal dialogue that gave her everything she had mentally so that the body could get the physical, because they're not separate. The mental and the physical aren't separate. Right? We've got to work those things together with our athletes to get the maximum, to give them the maximum that they can achieve. So we've got this card, and again, you can kind of see how it goes. And then this is kind of nice, because here's your zone of optimal performance number. If they say, yep, I'm around a 6, then I need to say, okay, hey, you're getting ready to go wrestle right now, Alex. What's your number at right now? I said, man, you know what? 6 is where I compete my best, but man, I'm at like a 9 right now. I don't know why. Okay, how am I going to help calm you down? We're going to use breathing techniques. But you might say, man, I don't know. I don't feel very good. I've been a little sore and sick the last couple days. 6 is my number. I'm about a 2 or 3 right now. We can use breathing techniques and some physical exertion to increase that body temperature, increase their confidence before they step on the mat. Simple little tools that if we use them right, we can kind of knock it out. Do you want me to talk breathing before you get into your groups or after? After. Done. Okay, I'm going to give you about 8 minutes. I'd like you to get with your groups. If you've used these before, talk a little bit about it and how it's worked for you. If you haven't used those, ask questions, come up with some solutions yourself or ways that we can improve this or things that maybe we've left off. And then we'll have 3, 4, group 5, go ahead and present at the end of that. Thanks.
I mean, you can do top and bottom. It might be like a good preseason for like a high school program, like a good preseason. Like, where do you think? Like, what's your go-to? What do you like? I usually I'll have my kids drill like pre-match day. Like, I'll give them a minute and say, you hit your go-to leg attack. So something that's not structured. Like, you're down by a point with 30 seconds left. What are you hitting to win this match? What is going to be your cut? Like, it's going to be your setup. It's going to be your attack. You know what I mean? Like, so finding out. All right, if you're new to I've known some of my kids since they were 8 years old. I've seen them wrestle enough. Like, I know, Ethan has an underhook throw by to a single. Like, I know Drew has a double leg. I know that Jai has a duck. But if you don't know your kids, like, this could be a great, a first-year coach coming to new job, new program, and just flip the card. Like, all right, so this is where, and then you can kind of, I feel like from a practice standpoint, you could structure all right, I got a lot of kids on this team that may be big double legs. Like, that might be like an offensive leg attack that, we practice. Like, that might be our team's bread and butter. Like, we're there. I don't have too much experience lately, like coaching kids that aren't my kids. You know what I mean? Like,
Our program is all youth wrestling, so I think this could work for a lot of the kids who had some experience in the program, but we also have a lot of first-year, really novice wrestlers who wouldn't be able to say,
Yeah, I mean,
"That's my best
I've
move."
tried the kids I've coached for years to sit down because he's not using this, but to just sit down and say, what are your goals?
I like
What
that.
takedowns do you want to do? But I found that probably 75% of them look at me like, what are your goals? I don't know, win all my matches. You know, and to get, now, these are kids who are maximum 6th grade.
yeah.
You know, so my son, who's in 6th grade this year, last summer, the end of last season was the first time he had ever really, I think, understood his goals, man. And he set goals for the season that were reasonable, attainable. So it's kind of hard, you know. Like you said that they were
this with a partner. Like,
Yeah.
if you're my wrestling partner, right? Fill out the part about Tommy, right? What do you feel like Tommy's best move on his feet is? Like, if you wrestle me every day for 3 months, whether it's drilling and not, you're probably like, he's probably pretty good at this. Like, where do you feel like you score offensively? Well, when he takes a bad single, I know that his recovering from bad shots is bad. I usually score from counter offense. Like, and it kind of exposes, because usually, like, when you got to talk about yourself, it can be tough. Like, if I ask you, like, what's your 3 best qualities, you're gonna be like, I'm gonna think about it. But if ready? But if I asked you to talk about your best friend and tell me what's the 3 best qualities that make him a really good friend, like, I can rattle them off. Like, it's like, I come from a counseling background. That's like my actual job, right? So, like, you could use that, like, all right, just group work, partner up. Or for the new kid, like, at the end of the season, like, what do you think is the move that you learn after 3 months that works best for you? Because the newbie's going to be like, what's my, I have a hard time getting in the stance. Like, I don't know what my best neutral is. And it's, but, like, I think from more of a middle school, high school, like, I am involved in our youth program, but we divide and conquer with assistance on who instructs what. Like, some of this is probably more like,
I tell you, I mean, if
very
you're
event
going to
specific.
Fargo,
Yeah.
you better be able to fill this up.
yeah.
You know, I mean, over a certain age, and it's a pretty young age, you know.
Oh, yeah, even if you're going to schoolboy nationals, you
Right,
better
that's
be able to
what
fill
that's
it.
what like a big. I mean, if you're a kid that's wrestling those tournaments, you better know what your best moves are. You better know, you know, what energy level you need to be at, how you need to feel before
I
a
feel
match.
like some of that might be hard for a middle schooler.
That's true, yeah. Because they're all going to say,
So this seems very focused on an event versus like what is the long-term goal. So yesterday in our discussion, I wrote down, boy, an athlete writing down what his or her goals are for the season, I think is really important. It's helpful because it begins to help you coach them individually on what gets better for them. This feels like it's very specific to an event,
Yeah, it
and
is.
it serves a purpose, especially if you're the coach all of a sudden coaching
I've
somebody
never
you don't
worked
know.
with them, so I can't. I mean, it's interesting. I like it. You know, Chris over there said they were available at Freestyle States this year. I don't remember seeing them, but you know, I mean, I go with the kids that I coach all year anyway.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting if there were a version of this that they had just for the season with their main coach. Like, here's my goal for the season. Here's what I'm good at. Here's what I really need to work on. And let's take a look once or twice during the season. How am I progressing against this? So it'd be interesting to see if there's an alternate version of this card that isn't for a specific event.
I bet you there is.
I bet we could build one. There you go.
And we got to remember, like, this training's for youth, middle school, high school,
Yeah.
club, and even like college or like regional training center. So, like, this may be great, like, for the like the national, like
For Fargo, it makes sense.
Fargo,
Yeah.
or
State
even if
level
you're, we're
Or
talking
even
about
kids that are just going to their state tournament. You know, I mean, because I don't know how it is in New Jersey and Connecticut, but like, there are many times that I go to the word states with our kids. I'm sitting there coaching with their club, because of their club, and it's interesting to me because I tell people, if that's what you want, that's fine. I'm keeping my mouth shut, because the last thing I want is me saying one thing and him saying another. Like, if you really want that person sitting there, I get it, but I know they're not going to shut up. So it kind of irritates me because I'll be like, I coach your kid in 100 matches. He's coaching me for, but these cards would be nice so that you sit down with that person and say, oh, hey, by the way, here's Connor's card. Just while we're going through, because I have certain philosophies with my kids, and it might be nice, like my kid goes to wrestlers and he's happy when they just I've started this year, like, at the end of the first period, if the score's close and you win the toss, I want the choice. I want to put you in a position to keep scoring points, because I don't want to close match one in the third. I want to be up 3, 4, 5 points. So, my kid's up 2-0 at the end of the first, wins the toss, and he knows that he wants to take it down. And he looks at the coach tells him to defer, the ref looks at the coach, sees the defer, he calls defer. Didn't end up affecting the match, but to me it'd have been nice, something like this might have on there. Hey, at the end of the third, if I win the toss and it's close, I want the choice. So the coach can say, oh, okay, this is how we want to do this. Now, that's a tactical decision. I get it. Like, that's the coach's decision. I didn't say anything to him. I don't really care. But, but stuff like that, as you go through the match, decisions, if you don't know the kid and what he's good at, I've coached kids before that I don't really know, and you put them down, and you look across the mat and the parents are like, oh, why'd you do that?
Why did coach tell me?
And then you find out real quick, 15, 20 seconds into the period, why? Because they horrible about them and they're never getting out. Or the kid they're wrestling is really, really good on top. I didn't know the kid was that good on top.
Yeah, right.
So, stuff like that. Like a little cheat sheet.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool, like, if you did this every year and you had like I try to keep a file for some of my kids, like watching John Smith. Is your best move consistently changing, or like, as they evolve?
It's still your best move.
Yeah. Or, then on the flip side, like, all right, like I'll tell a few of my higher level kids, like, I'll tell them when they go live, I said, you're not, like, I humbly saying this, I had 4 state place winners this year. One of my state place winners, his number move, underhook, throw by, and on 90% of the kids, he scored. I'm like, when you go live in our room, you are not allowed, I don't want you to go underhook. I don't want you to go
that one
underhook.
down.
If someone stops it, where are we going? You know what I mean? So, like, challenge them. All right, so your best move, and your best move is a single and a double. So what are 2 that, not like, we're not talking like flying squirrels, or what are some high percentage attacks that you feel like in the off season, this is where you need to work? Doesn't mean you never shoot a double leg or under a throw by, but if I control your right hand, you can't get to the hook. Where are we going? You have an answer, because we get to the state tournament. By the time we get to the state tournament, someone's probably going to know something about you, like,
At least enough to slow you down.
yeah, and especially after the first one. Like, all right, you win your quarterfinal, quarterfinal bout. They know I'm not. This one is not coming. I'm not. There's no window. I am holding your hand. And he's just one example. But like that, like, I feel like you using this card gives like a little. But you could like branch a lot off.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think on the flip side, it forces them to think about it.
Yeah.
I do like, how do we up your energy or bring it back down to where you perform? I like that piece of it. They're all different.
Yeah, because clearly every kid's different.
And it's funny because
Telling them to relax, it's not a big deal before a match, only makes them more mad.
1.
tracks all their takedowns and stats at the end of the year. It's all just who had the most pins.
Time.
Who had this.
I try, if I hear a good conversation, I try to leave it. I used to 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, 1/16. Like you can anyway. You can get up to about 100 and I don't know 100,012th or something, and then my math is gone. So thoughts, group 5. What are your thoughts? What was the discussion about, and what can you share with the group?
We had a really in-depth conversation from like different perspectives, like for this card, like if you're a youth coach compared to a middle school, high school coach, compared to a club coach, like how you could use the card. Like I feel like as a high school, primarily a high school coach, like this is what you're good at and exploring it, and then like looking back at it and using this card as a vantage point. Like, all right, I know that my underhook throw by is my go-to. So in the off season, let's look at attacks that maybe aren't in your best 1 and 2 that we can kind of improve on for the next season. Like I know you have a great underhook throw by. What if someone stops it? What is 2 and 3? Like, or for like I can only speak for my high school kids. Sometimes they put their ego to the shelf. Other times they let it bleed. It depends on what it is, right? But sometimes they have a hard time identifying like what am I good at, right? So frame it as, all right, let's switch these cards with your partners. Talk about what your partner, because if I know my wrestling partner for 3 months, I know what he's good at. Like if he gets an elbow pass, I'm probably getting high crotched. Like so I know that's his bread and butter. Like where are his faults? Like I know if he takes a bad shot, I'm scoring because he doesn't recover well from a counter offense position. Like so I think you could use this card. Like this is great if you're a club coach. I've never met you. Like I got 5 seconds to know a kid. But as like a high school coach, like I feel like you could, like from my perspective, I know if I've coached you for 3 or 4 years, I should know the answers to this card.
Amen.
And I think, I'm sorry.
Yep.
We also talked about, it's called a goal card, and the way it's written to us really seems like it's more like, I think you said competition
card.
Oh, I like that.
Because a goal card would be, you sit down at the beginning of the season, you say, what are your goals? And rather than say best move from neutral, like, what do you want to develop from neutral? Or what are your top 5 goals of the year? So, it was a little misleading, with the youth kids that we coach all year, sometimes goals are difficult because you ask them and they look at you like, you got 4 heads. What are your goals this year? I want to win all my matches. Okay, well, so I think goals are fine after a certain age. I'm still trying to figure out what that age is, because they can actually codify them and be realistic about them. But, these are great competition cards. I mean, Chris, I think you said that they were available for states this year. I didn't see them,
right now.
but
We've got them linked on the mat.com if you go to coaches and educational resource.
Exact same ones that you have here.
but I only coach the kids that I normally coach. But, and we were just talking about this, whether it's freestyle states or folk style states or whatever, there are times when I'm in the corner with a kid that I've coached all year or 4 years, and there's a club coach next to me. And I'll say to a parent, that's fine if that's what you want, I'm not talking to him. I'm not, I'll be there, but because I know he's going to be, and us saying opposite things isn't going to work, but it would be nice to be able to say, hey, that's great, I'm here, here's this kid's card, this is what we do during the season. So that he's not yelling something that's completely off the wall, or she, I should say, off the wall to a kid that I know, can't do a double over inside trip, whatever. So it would be good to have for those kids when you get to those levels, because the higher level, and this is what we're talking about, like the higher level kids that are going to states, going to the national tournaments, better be able to fill that out. Because if they can't and they don't know, then either they're really not thinking about it or us as coaches aren't taking the time to make them really think about it. You go into a match without a game plan, you're planning to lose.
And your plan's going to change. I asked Buxton about practice planning. And Jeff Buxton, you guys all know Coach Buxton. So I asked him, I'm like, how often do you do a practice plan? He goes, every practice I've ever coached. I said, wow, that's awesome. How often have you followed it perfectly 100%? He said, never. It's not about what the plan is necessarily. It's that you have a plan so that you have an idea for the focus, and then you can adapt as you get in the room. He said, you never know what the kids are coming in like today, right? They may come in after your 4 hours of testing and you're like, man, I didn't expect that. Today was supposed to be a hard day because then we're going to taper for a big tournament coming up. You had your plan set to go, and then they come in with a different energy. Or maybe they all went out, a group of your team had a party last night, and right? It wasn't an academic thing that you were ready for. It wasn't something else. It was just something that you had no ability to control. They come in, they're a little burnt. And how do you adapt your program to still get as much as you can? I've had practices where the team came in, it was supposed to be a hard day, and I just said, you know what, grab all the cleaning stuff, 30 minutes, clean the mats. And they were like, not a punishment, just, hey, we're going to make sure of the room. Now they have ownership of the room's clean, they're not going to dirty it because they're the ones cleaning it. And we don't do it all the time, but then after the 30 minutes, I said, you know what, room looks great, guys. You know what, that was our workout today, head back. And now they've had a project where they all had to work together. They had to clean the room. They have an appreciation for the room that maybe they didn't have before. And we had an easy day, but we still got something accomplished. And sometimes just cleaning the room might be enough. So this is great. Any other?
One other thing that we talked about briefly was, if we buy that this is all about the competition event, what if there were a version of this that was for the practice room? Because the idea of learning from your wrestlers, how do you learn best in the practice room? How do you get feedback best in the practice room? Particularly for new wrestlers, because I work in a youth program, we have a lot of first year, second year wrestlers who just don't quite have, in their own minds what they're really good at. But what if there were a version of this that said, okay, we got a version for competition, let's also think about how we learn in the practice room.
I like that. I'm going to change the name of this to the competition card. That's awesome. I appreciate that recommendation, and I've got the note down. Let's make sure before we leave here that as a group, we've put this together. One of the things that I'm not very good at is delegating. And I said there were the three people in coach education, me, myself, and I. Sometimes we don't get along. I'm going to delegate that to the group, that before we leave here today, let's make sure we have at least the information. I'll create the template and the pretty stuff. I like to do that stuff anyway. But if we get the key points that you think are vital, if anybody has those key points, what I'd like to do, Mark, would you be willing to be the central kind of feed for that?
Sure.
So during breaks or during your group discussions, let's make sure we get Mark some of the information. What do you need to know about how athletes learn at practice, how they can maximize their practice time? And we'll cut that down to a few versions of what that is. I think that's a great idea, to be a great companion to this, because we spend a heck of a lot more time practicing than we do competing. At least we should. Have you ever seen our LTAD poster? Anybody that's taken the Copper course, went through all that stuff? If you've taken it recently, our long-term athlete development poster, we sat down from executive director to national team staff all the way down to me, even. I got to sit in on it. And we talked about this poster, and I said, what's the number of matches for this age group that we think is an appropriate range, right? And if we said, 15 to 20 for a certain age group, if you're doing 25, 30 matches, that's not a problem as long as your athlete wants to do it, they're having a good experience, and you're keeping it fun and keeping it light, depending on that age. But if you're doing 150 matches, and we're recommending 15 to 20 for a 4-year-old, you're way off the mark. And these are the best minds our sport has. And I put it out in front of them. They're like, yeah, we've got to get that competition down to increase more training opportunities and practice. But that means that we as coaches have to make practice more fun, more engaging, right? I'm doing it with the Silver College. The first few cities have always been great. I mean, I took it when Cody Bickley was running. I had a great experience, great networking, awesome opportunity. But I don't think until now we're starting to figure out how to make it more fun for you guys, more engaging for you guys, so that you guys can share that information. You're our experts, right? We just get to help facilitate this process. What else did you guys, any thoughts, comments, the goods, the bad, Sydney?
So one of the problems that I see with the kid program is that, like, you have even the elite kids or the middle rank kids, is that when they go out to, like, say the normal tournaments, not the national tournaments, or that we kind of treat the smaller tournaments as kind of a practice thing, but it's hard to get the kids into that because I want to win. And so one reason I bring it up is, like, you'll see what's your best move in neutral, what's your best move on top, what's your best move on bottom, but we're trying to get them to do other moves to branch out into something maybe they're not more comfortable in, but maybe something they should learn. And so for me, like when I go on the kind of mat, all right, I know that's your bread and butter. You do that move well. You did it the last 10 tournaments. Can we try a different move?
I like that. So what you're saying is we're able to take what may appear to be more for like higher level events, and we're going to be able to say, hey, so my best takedown is the double single. My second best is a double leg, and a move I'm trying to work on. Maybe it's just an addition of one move I'm trying to work on is, and then at this event we're saying, hey, this is the tournament to work on that move, right? And hey, win or lose the match, it doesn't matter, because winning isn't about getting your hand raised. Winning is about knowing what's important now. You ever do that acronym, WIN? What's important now? Hey, you want to win? Yeah, I want to win. What's important now? Well, what's important now is developing that new technique. I like that. And this is what's great. Just because we have a template doesn't mean you have to use it the way it's designed. You can create new concepts, and I love that. Now you're telling kids it's okay to try, and if your hand doesn't get raised at the end, you didn't lose, you still won, because you knew what was important now in that moment. Thank you. I have to summarize things in my brain so I remember. That's awesome.
So piggybacking off of that, I would say put where the kid says what they need to work on, and then potentially what a coach says they need to work on. Because sometimes the kid might say, oh, I need to do this, but you, as a coach, you're like, no, I want you to see you do that. Because I got plenty of kids that on bottom, they don't want to be on bottom. And I'm like, you know what, this is not an important tournament, you're going to sit on bottom. And I'm going to make you fight up, and I'm going to tell you, I want to see you do a stand-up. And if you got to work on it, through all the matches in this tournament, I'm going to put you on bottom, because I think you need to get better at that. Whether you want to admit that or not is a different story.
And then there's the ingredients to that. How do I deliver that message so that they turn it into a positive? Because if and I've done this, a kid just got rode all second period, it's his choice or her choice in the third, they look over at me and I'm like, yeah. They're like, no. And I'm like, go down. And they're like, okay. Well, if that's my attitude going down, what are my chances of getting out? Pretty, especially if I just got rode like Seabiscuit, right? Like that's not fun. I had a kid I used to practice with, and one day he's like, I'm struggling on bottom. I really want to work on bottom today. And I'm like, all right, you warmed up? He said, yeah, I'm warmed up. All right, let's go. And an hour and 15 minutes later, he was still on bottom. And it wasn't aggressive. It wasn't overly physical. But as he would get frustrated and start doing some things, all right, I just protected myself and got out of the way and just said, I just want you comfortable with what this is like so that that anxiety and that angst isn't there. And it was an interesting hour and 15 minutes, but at the end of it, he kind of, he shook it out and he got his cool down, he comes down, he's like, I needed that. He's like, it was not fun. To this day, like if we see him, he's like, can you remember that time you rode me for like an hour? I'm like, yeah, I remember it really well. I said I had to duck about 3 punches and a couple of elbows, and it was I knew he was anxious and frustrated, and that stress was there. I expect a little bit of that stuff coming from an athlete when they're in a tough situation, because I have to be bigger than that. The problem is when all of a sudden we go down to that level and say, oh, you're going to punch me now? Huh? Now you're going to? Because now that ego gets in the way.
Especially at the elementary level, every one of my kids, whether they want to or not, wrestles on the bottom. Because I'm also a very firm believer that in order to get good at something, what do you got to do? You got to do it. If you can't get off the bottom now, the only way you're going to learn to get off the bottom is by doing it. And at the elementary level, I don't care if you win or lose a match ever. Sure. I don't care if it's the county championships. I don't care if it's PGW state championships. I don't care if you win. The only two things that I care about is if you give me 100% and you don't get beat with the same things over and over again when I show you how to stop it.
Do the kids know that? Your athlete feedback sheet at the end of the season will be interesting. Do your kids know exactly, and I'm sure they do, right? Absolutely. But it'll be interesting to see, because now we can measure it, right? I can say what the direction is, but until we measure it, do we really know? And if there's 3 or 4 kids missing it, out of 30 or 40, you're still going to be able to...
If you win every single match you wrestle, how do I know what you need to work on? If you're not losing, you're not growing.
Yeah, and what's the appropriate growth for an athlete? Anybody a video gamer in here? Anybody design them? Have you ever designed? So the video game designers design all their games, and this is from statistical research, right? I think how much money these folks make. Every game has to be competitive at each level at a 25 to 75% success level. What they find is if I'm playing your video game and I lose more than 75% of the time, I'm playing a different game because it's just too challenging. But I also, if I win more than 75% of the time, now I'm winning too easily. And now I'm looking for the next challenge. So our job as coaches is to find that 25 to 75% window so that your kids never lose more than 75%, but that there's at least 25% of the competition that they're challenged in where they're facing, maybe it's not an easy match, maybe they still win, but it's the challenge piece. It's not the hand raised as much. The kid that goes out and gets out of the first period and doesn't get pinned. That can be a win even if he gets pinned 7 seconds into the second period because they've never gotten there. So winning here, much different than how you want to define winning to your athletes. I want to win. You are winning because what's our culture? What are our values? And if we can make sure that all these tie together, when they say, yeah, but I didn't win. Yeah, you did. You won in my mind and in my heart. You won me over today because you tried that whole time to get out on bottom. And I knew I put you in a tough spot, buddy. But thank you for your effort. That's what winning's about to me. Now all of a sudden kids are like, the pressure goes away. The encouragement comes back in. Now we've got good communication with the kids. It's good. Other thoughts on that? Yes, Eric.
We were talking before we started all this with the size or how do you best utilize this with kids, especially if it's a conglomerate of kids that you're not used to. Like in a tournament situation, you were saying bag tag. I think that's a good idea. Maybe even have the option for a lanyard. So when the kid shows up, they got their bottle of water, they got their towel, they got their shirt, they have the tag, they can just hand it to the coach and just pull it off. Or if they wanted to, they could tie it to a bag and leave it on the side.
Probably a much more cost-efficient way of doing it as well, right? Because those luggage tags, to have them all done, those aren't cheap. So a lanyard gives you the opportunity to do it and mass produce them.
You could also slip them into those like little, plastic sheets or whatever, and you could be a paper card that they can modify if they needed to.
So now it's easy to update instead of once and done, right? I like that idea. God, man, you guys are putting me to work. I came here.
You have a lanyard, so just clip 2 lanyards to your event pass and.
Yeah.
Or you could also write recent injuries or medical. Yeah, like asthma, stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're a new coach, you won't know.
I was saying like concussion history or something, because if a kid starts acting funny on the mat, the trainer comes over and goes, have they had concussion before? And if you don't know them, like, I don't know.
No, you're absolutely, and that's, we actually had a parent of a kid at camp, doing a technique demonstration, and the kid kind of goes over, and everybody said he didn't hit his head. He touched his head on the mat as he went through, but he didn't hit it. And threw up a couple of times over the course of that next day and didn't tell anybody until after like the second one. He's like, I think I might have done something. I've been throwing up a couple of times after this. He said, I thought it was the flu, but it's not the flu. So we took him to the USOC folks, and we had 4 doctors looking at him, and they said it was one of the most severe concussion cases they had had in about 5 years. And they said it didn't happen here. This is a classic second concussion syndrome. Yep. So he said, call the parents, find out when the last severe concussion was, because we need to know the timeline to be able to. And so, you call home and you get a parent and they say, he's never had a concussion. I said, wow, your kid's been wrestling a lot. Never? Never. I said, well, we've got 4 USOC doctors here saying it's pretty clear that this is one of the worst they've seen. Oh, he's a drama queen. He loves the attention. Can you imagine? And then you get a doctor at the U.S. Olympic Committee looking at the kid after mom or dad or whoever's off the phone, and they say, do you feel safe in your home? What are they looking for in that moment? They're looking for a reason to call human services to have the kid pulled out of the house. And then the kid looks at you, and you know what he says? He says, I can handle it. Tears. The whole thing. I can handle it. Wow, right? And so at that point, doctor can't make the call because now there's, right? This is a part of the safe sport thing that's so important for us to be able to absorb. I would say, I would imagine no one in this room has any intention to do any harm physically, sexually, or emotionally to any kid, right? That's not our intent. We don't want to do those things. The problem is if we use the grooming tactics that the creepers use, what we're doing is we're telling those kids that those tactics are safe and okay. And then eventually when they're out of our hands and they're in the hands of a creeper and they're doing the same grooming tactics that we did, they think it's okay. And they become more susceptible to that abuse. We didn't intend to abuse, and we would never have done it. But what about the next one or the next one or the next one that just might? Have we taught our kids the right way to protect themselves and the right way that an adult figure should work with them, right? And that's why these things, it's going to get to the point too, frontal hugs with an athlete are going to be out. You can do a side dog, hey, good job. But it's not something where accidentally genitalia could touch or on purpose genitalia could touch. And these are tough things to talk about, but we're in the toughest sport in the world, so we can talk about them, right? And we need to talk about them. There's a lot that goes on in the communication process, and hopefully these are some of the tools that are going to get us there. Anything else on this one? Yes, sir?
So we were thinking about this for the bigger tournaments and things like that, where the number is, it would be really nice to have a picture of the kid. Because like when we go to Fargo and you've got 150 kids, 120 kids that come from your state team.
Sure.
For like Virginia, we assemble at the beginning of Fargo and they're like, this kid, this kid, this kid, this kid, raise your hand. And they're like, Coach, you are with those 4 kids. And I might have met them at camp and maybe this is the first time I'm really dealing with them. So if I have these kinds of cards, I might not recognize the name, but if I see that picture, I might recognize that kid, a little bit more and then be able to put that info to it.
Maybe make the timeline a circle the number, and
Okay.
leave the square an option for a photo.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. That gives us the room to do it on the card.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are killing. No, this is awesome. Like I said, we want to improve that. This is good. It's tougher the older I get. I'm like, my phone, my arms aren't long enough to hold it far enough. I've got them. I don't know if I'm embarrassed to use them or I just hate them. I've had Coke, but the glasses I had when I got when I was 4, like they were so thick you could see into the future. So I've already experienced this.
It's the creepers or the predators that ruin it for the rest of the good folks out there. And it goes into coaching, camp counselors, priests that select policemen, that select few that ruin it for all the other good folks.
It is. And what's great though is we can see those negative sides and we can say, you know what, we can put some things in place and if it makes sense and we can embrace it and it's good, we can make positive change. We all have no intent to do these things, but somebody out there does. And we're going to come across them. So if we haven't prepared these kids right, and this is what's great, Safe Sport, USA Wrestling, we've got to be able to communicate what right looks like. You guys did it yesterday on your values. You know what right looks like? You know what wrong looks like? Sit your kids in a circle and talk about it. Hey, you guys, when I coach you, there's certain things that I do. I have to touch you in certain ways. What does right look like when I coach you? Oh, well, you're doing the move, you're doing that. What does wrong look like if I was coaching you? Ooh, well, maybe if you touched me in places that I didn't expect. Maybe you can have these discussions with the kids. I would certainly recommend you talk with your administrators before having some of these talks because you don't want it to get misconstrued and maybe they can say, you know what, we're going to provide the school guidance counselor. You're going to have a nice plan going in on how this talk happens. We've got resources out there that we can use to make sure that we create that environment, the best environment to have that communication, right? I guarantee somebody in your community will come and serve the time to help you out to explain these things the right way. But I think that's the outreach, right? We've got to be able to discuss these things and what right looks like and what wrong looks like, and you don't have to act it out because then they're going to hit the button and it's going to get, but you could say, hey, just talk through what that process is like. I think that's a great point.